Another episode here of Getting There with Gaz. Joining me, Kevin Brown. You may know him from ESPN, from the Baltimore Orioles and more. We'll talk about his journey of where he landed. But Kevin, I'm going to open with this. I open with the same question with all of my guests. Take us to a young version of you. 6 years old. What is your dream job when you're a child? Is that dream job the same thing you want when you're 18 years old?
Yeah, well, that was a year ago, so it's very easy to do that. Let's see. It was 2019, way back in the old days. By the way, we're going to have some great background audio of my dog chewing on a football right now, which is really good for the podcast. Hey, can you to the bone, my friend? Because that doesn't make squeaking noises.
What's going to be better, the dog or baby Rex crying in the background that it's dinner time? Whatever audio, start placing your bets now.
Rex. 100% baby Rex. I just tried to hand my dog his bone, and he looked at me like, "You traitor," and went right back to the football.
Don't you know who the hell I am?
Yeah. I'm Kevin Brown, 6 years old. I want to be a zookeeper at age 6 because I had a giant box of animals. I was obsessed with animals. And I didn't actually realize what a zookeeper did, which is largely like getting in cages and cleaning up manure.
Right.
And all my love and respect to the zookeepers of the world who do wonderful things. But I soon realized that probably wasn't for me. I just had this real obsession with animals as a kid, even though I never had a pet of any kind outside of a couple of fish in second grade. And then it was around 8 years old when the sports craze really kicked in. I actually never watched sports for about the first 7 years of my life. My dad's a big sports fan too. And then it was 98. I was 8 years old, and I just all of a sudden out of nowhere really got into the Yankees. And that was the 98 Yankees team that won 125 games. Started watching the Giants, became very quickly obsessed with them. They were not having a good year, but they finished strong. They beat an undefeated Denver team in week 14. This squeaking is driving me insane. And the Knicks that year, 98-99 Knicks, 8 seed in the shortened season, beat the Heat in Game 5 in the first round. Allen Houston hits a running jumper in the final seconds, so they make it to the NBA Finals. So it was a very fruitful time for me to become a New York sports fan because there was a lot of good stuff going on. And I wonder if I had been, and I don't say this to disrespect the Mets, but like most of my family's Mets fans, if I had been a Mets fan and didn't start out with a World Series team, but started out with a mediocre Mets team and, then I had a mediocre Giants team, like would I have been as ingrained as I was? I don't know. I was kind of spoiled as a kid because my dad rooted for the Yankees and I rooted for the Yankees and they won 3 in a row. So it was around 8, 9 when I started just becoming so focused on sports. And very quickly that became the picture.
And the reason why you're a New York sports fan is because you grew up in Long Island, right? For those who don't know.
Yeah, grew up on Long Island, which is mainly Mets territory where I live. But my grandparents on my dad's side were both Yankees fans. My grandmother on that side still is. And so he was. So like most kids, you just follow what your dad does. Yankees fan, okay. Giants fan, Knicks fan, great. So most of my family on that side is from Long Island and they are Mets fans. And
So
I had the last laugh over them basically every year.
That's right. The Yankees are hitting that glory years of the late 90s. Yeah. Like you laid out there, the New York sports scene looks great and everything else. When you're growing up in Long Island at that point, is there a voice? Is there a personality? Is there somebody that now you're starting to enjoy sports and become a sports fan that you're watching as a broadcaster and say, you know what, that's the person that I want to kind of be like in a few years from now?
I have to correct you first of all and say on Long Island, or else my Long Island brethren will get very mad.
Sorry. That's right. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I'll take the fine for that one.
Yeah. $1 in the kangaroo jar. I guess probably John Sterling, because I listened to a lot of Yankees games. And obviously I watched a lot of Yankees games, but spending time outside, my dad would have the radio on in the garage all the time. My dad still works in the garage a ton. We'll put on WFAN. And so I listen to a lot of Mike and the Mad Dog, not play-by-play broadcasters, but God, I listen to that show all the time. And who around my age living in the tri-state area didn't. And then just listening to the Yankees on the radio all the time. If we were going somewhere, if we were driving back from dinner or from a family party, like, you better believe I was requesting that we put the Yankee game on the radio. So Sterling and Michael Kay for a few years, and then Sterling and Charlie Steiner for a short period, and then Sterling and Susan Waldman. But yeah, John was pretty much a constant in my childhood.
You hit the point. You're ready to graduate high school. You're going through that process of picking a school. What schools did you consider, and why did you eventually choose Syracuse?
Yeah, thankfully, my parents had a better idea of this than I did. Most kids who are 16, 17, going into college want to become a broadcaster. Most of them probably know about the legacy of Syracuse. And I don't know why I didn't put in enough of the research, but like, you knew it was a great program, but I got there, and only when I got there I realized who some of the great names were. But I think my parents recognized it pretty quickly. Like, hey, if you want to try this is really the school to go to. I looked at a bunch of different schools, most of which were not broadcast specific. But I just wanted to look at programs in the Northeast. So I was very into Villanova for a while, even though they don't really have a broadcasting program. Boston College I was interested in. But yeah, Syracuse, it's funny. It drew me in part because of the broadcast program, but in part because I went there on an accepted students day. I had a lovely spring sunny day. Again, very good luck with the weather. My favorite color my whole life was orange. So I felt the vibes there, good, positive, visible vibes. And it was the kind of place that felt like home. And looking back on it, it's honestly, again, very lucky, because yes, it felt like home, but I should have thought, you idiot, you want to go to school for broadcasting, you have to go to Syracuse or Fordham in the Northeast. Basically, there are some other great schools, but for that specific program, like, what are you doing? I don't know if I was just lazy, or if instead of researching colleges, I was just watching Yankee games, which is probably more likely. But yeah, I had the right kind of vibe about Syracuse. I have family up there. My grandmother lives up near Binghamton. I have some aunts and uncles and cousins up there. So I like the appeal of it being close to family, being close to home. I like the area, but the answer to this question should be that I went there because it's the best broadcast school, and that was part of it. But I got there and I started looking at pictures at WAR, the radio station. Oh, there's Ian Eagle, there's Sean McDonough, there's Dave Pash. Why didn't I know this? So, yeah, just some degree of research, but some degree of just stupid luck.
It's like a club that you didn't realize you weren't invited to, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, all these guys are in this club. I want to be in this club now. And the
Ridiculous.
Yeah, right. And like the expectations, your freshman and sophomore year, I've heard stories about how tough it can be just to get on the air. Can you kind of take us through that evaluation period of, to even get on the air in Central New York, you've got to go through all these kind of phases before they actually say, here's a microphone, call a Syracuse game.
And I had to do it against a lot of kids who knew what they were getting into, right? A lot of kids who went to school and had a very obvious idea of what they wanted to do and what WAER radio was. For those who don't know, WAER is the student radio station, the primary one in Syracuse, as my dog now chews on a squeaking beer toy. Is this video as well?
It is video. So yeah,
this is what my dog's chewing on if you're watching the video.
He's got a big lead on Rex right now on the sound.
Go fetch. WAR has been a student station for a long time at Syracuse. It's an NPR station. Marty Glickman, one of the great broadcasters ever, was basically one of the original members of AER. And as you go on through the years, Bob Costas, Marv Albert, Sean McDonough, Ian Eagle, Dave Pash, in recent years, Jason Benetti, who I'm sure we'll get into. A lot of folks have gone there, and some very worthy journalists and news anchors as well. But AER is known for its sports program. So day one, there is a freshman orientation meeting, essentially, at WAER. And it's in the basement of this off-campus radio station. So I show up. I'm sure I was wearing a Yankees hat or a Giants hat, maybe a Yankees jersey, something like that. Go in, prove, hey, I'm a sports guy, right? I know sports. Look at me. And there are probably 40 kids crammed into this basement, every single one of whom is wearing some piece of sports apparel, right? There's JJ with the Dolphins hat. There's Tim with the Mets shirt. And you realize quickly, oh, every one of these guys, and by and large there were men, a couple of women, but by and large, AER has been pretty male dominated over the years. Every single one of them wants to do what you do. That first meeting, the seniors outline to you what is expected of a freshman who wants to get on air. You don't get to get on air right away. Almost no freshman actually gets on air at WAER. What you do is you show up once a week at 5 a.m, because the students will go in Monday to Friday and they'll be on the air at 6:30, 7:30, and 8:30 a.m. to do a 2-3-minute sports update. So you have to go in at 5 a.m. as a freshman and write a 2-3-minute sports update as if you're going to do it on the air to train yourself. Then you record it when you can fend off the other 6 freshmen that are there that morning to get into the recording booth. God help the person who's the first freshman who gets into the booth that day and then does 8 different takes of it while the rest of us are lined up outside. And then you're paired up with a senior, and that senior listens to your mock sportscast. You do about 4 of those. And then the senior class makes cuts. So you go from 40 to about 20 very quickly. So there are some freshmen who go in there thinking, I'm going to be in broadcasting. They play 4 mock sportscasts for a senior. And if that senior thinks they don't have it, within a month or 2, you're done. So it's extremely competitive. And then from that group of 20, you start to write a little more frequently. That gets pared down. Sophomore year, you end up on something called desk. You're not on the sports staff, but you start coming in to broadcast. You start helping out. You start writing things for the host. You start logging highlights. You basically just hang around. If something ends up on fire, you grab an extinguisher. And then you write more and more and more fake sportscasts. And eventually your writing and your voicing is good enough to where you are allowed on air. Then you have to call games. If you want to call games for a living, you have to go to the top of the Carrier Dome and take a little $10 recorder and call a game to yourself. You'd be the weird kid sitting in the back of the dome holding a little cheap recorder you got at Radio Shack. You have a roster page in front of you and you're calling the game like it's Game 7 of the World Series. Or more likely, you go drive or you go get a ride from a friend to a high school game. And you go to Jamesville DeWitt or Fayetteville Manlius or Cicero North Syracuse. You sit in the back of the bleachers, football, basketball, lacrosse, whatever. Maybe you don't even have a roster. You just work on it. And then you track down an upperclassman who's on staff. Hey, I called a game. Can I play a 10-minute stretch? And you go over that. So that process continues. And then usually it's around junior year when you're actually allowed to call games. So if you want to call games for a living, the first 3 years are all the build up to that, really. And then senior year is the year where you can actually finally do this. I called 1 basketball game as a junior, and then lacrosse season, the seniors depart and the junior class takes over. But going into lacrosse season of junior year, I'd only called 1 game on the air. There are a lot of schools, if you go to, you'll call basically every game for the first 3 years. So it is a really intense, truly competitive process. And I could point to my senior class of about a dozen, and almost all of them are still in the industry, and some of them doing quite well. So every year you're up against kids who are your friends, but also very, very seriously your competitors.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. Like, I thought you might have been able to break through your freshman or sophomore year because of where your path has taken you in your career. And to hear that, I think a lot of people, especially young broadcasters, and I use that term not just in age, but in people starting off in their careers, it is a challenge. Like you said, your first time's junior year. Is it pressure? Is it nerves? What was it? Was it just learning? Was it as simple as that? Like, look, I just needed to get better before I felt comfortable or before Syracuse said I was comfortable enough to represent that school on air in a broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, the standards are as high as at any student station across the country. I mean, if you listen to the average senior at Syracuse University that's at WAR, you listen to their tape, by and large, those 20, 21-year-old kids are good enough to do this on ESPNU or to do this for a lot of different universities and colleges. They're really good. You're drilled in the fundamentals. And if you don't do it, the 6 guys or gals behind you are going to do it. So there is a degree of pressure. I also just didn't really, again, figure out what I was doing to some extent, but I didn't figure out my voice. I think I have a good on-air voice now, and I don't say that to be arrogant or anything, but I think I have a pretty good sound. It's a deeper voice and a deeper tone than it ever was in college, when I sounded like a 12-year-old kid with a whiny Long Island accent. And I go back and listen to those tapes, which are only 10 years ago, and I just cringe. I can't listen to some of them. I am in a very fortunate position right now. I'm calling Major League Baseball games, right? I'm working college football and basketball and softball and hockey and Little League and some MLB radio for ESPN. Like, I'm having a great career. I was the 6th person in my class cleared. Wow. So part of that is because it's insanely competitive. And part of that is I just didn't have the sound. I could write. I've always been a good writer, but it was actually the performance medium. I'd put my writing skills up there with anybody in my class, but there were a lot of kids who were just better performers. So I had to bring that aspect out. And there was pressure. I mean, when you have kids who are getting cleared and you feel like you're still months behind and you think, I'm going to school, I'm paying a lot of money to do this for a living. Like, I got to pick this up. I have to stay late. I have to stay over winter break. This is my shot. You see seniors that get to senior year and have only had the chance to call a few games because the other people in their class worked harder. And so it was intensely competitive and probably as competitive a situation as I'll be in. And that way it was a really wonderful preparation for the real world. But yeah, I'd say to any young broadcasters who are listening, like, you don't have to be the first. You just have to get better with every tape and every game you call. And you have to learn at least one thing every time, because there were 5 kids who were cleared ahead of me. Some were a couple of weeks, some were a few months. And there were times where I thought, am I crazy for spending all the time doing this? And I just tried to learn 1 or 2 specific things, whether it was voice, vocabulary, an aspect of preparation every time.
By the time you hit the senior year, you graduate. What is the first job? What is your first professional gig that Kevin Brown is now getting to be a pro broadcaster?
Yeah. Again, immense luck comes into my journey here. I've been very, very lucky in a lot of ways. I did not graduate early, which a couple of my classmates did. I didn't want to rob myself of any of the 4 years of college, which I'm happy about. But what it meant was I couldn't leave early and go do, a minor league baseball job unless it was a job for a short season league that started in July or something like that. In the summer leading into my senior year, I had an internship in Alaska, of all places. There's a college baseball league up there called the Alaska Baseball League. And there was a Syracuse broadcast connection. So I called games with a buddy of mine from Syracuse, Tim Bickford, up for the Matsu Miners, Palmer, Alaska. And I was connected with Jason Benetti, who was then the voice of the AAA Syracuse Chiefs. Then they were the Nationals AAA affiliate. Now they are the Syracuse Mets. And I started sending Jason some tapes, and he started critiquing my work. I met with him when I got back up to Syracuse for senior year, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to help me out with the media guide this offseason. Would you pass this around to the students?" Because at that point, I had become the sports director at the student station. So I said, "Sure, I'll take it around." Nobody seemed interested. And then I thought, well, you know what? I might as well do this. It would give me a leg up for an opening in Syracuse the next year, because Jason needed a number 2 broadcaster. So I started working on the
Sorry,
media
real
guide.
quick. Mike Cousins is his guy at that point, right? Mike
Yeah,
Cousins was
Mike
his number two.
Cousins,
Yeah.
who's with me at ESPN right now. Mike, we were in the same grade. Mike was Jason's number 2 in 2010. He was going to do some games, and then Bob McGilligan, who became the Columbus Blue Jackets voice, he leaves, and then Mike ends up basically being the number 2 for AAA. But Mike decided to go basically out into the pro world and leave Syracuse, and he started working for the Dayton Dragons, another minor league team. So Jason had an opening. I started working on the media guide, started getting to know him. I made a couple more tapes for him, and he brought me on. And I can very comfortably look back and say, I did not know what the hell I was doing. Like, I wasn't ready at all. Most of that first year, I was a real mess because April and May, I was starting a minor league season while also trying to graduate college and trying to enjoy the end of my senior year. And I showed up late a couple of times. One night I was out really late and I was in the studio and I just had no voice at all. But he said, well, this is your job. You're coming in. You're going to gut it out. And I was just a really bad teammate. But he saw something in me. And after every game we did, Jason would call the first 3 and the last 3 innings. I would call the middle 3. And then we'd alternate color commentary on the other person's innings. And after every game, we would go back. We shared an apartment during the season. And we'd go back to the apartment or back to a hotel when we're on the road. And we'd listen to at least an inning of every game. Every single game. 7 o'clock game, 11 innings. We're off the air at 10:45. We're back at the hotel 11:15. Cue up the tape. We're listening to the 5th inning. And it drove me absolutely crazy. But it was absolutely what I needed. I needed that level of structure and discipline. And by about August of that year, we started to really get on a roll. But if because I didn't graduate early, I mean, my options were very limited. It just so happened that a AAA baseball team had an opportunity in the city in which I was broadcasting. And it just so happened that I had met the guy in the summer, or at least, through email in the summer, and met him at the start of the year. And it's just pure dumb luck. Because you go around AAA, and there are a lot of great broadcasters in AAA. About half of the division that I was in is now in the major leagues. And there were guys that have been doing this for decades in their 50s and 60s in AAA. And again, here I am, 21. Like, I don't have a care in the world. I'm better than all these people. And then very quickly you realize you need to grow up. So I, again, got very lucky that there was just this opportunity open and that somebody saw something in me. And I'm not sure how they saw it.
Yeah, let's go back to that part you said about it driving you crazy listening to the tape. Is it because you're 21 and you're not maybe mature enough to handle the criticism? Is it because it's your partner and not your boss? Because that's hard to do too, because he's sitting right next to you. He's supposed to be your partner, your friend, if you can. But now it's like, oh, I got to talk to the teacher after class. I thought we were friends. Is it a little combination of those things that made you go crazy after each broadcast?
A little bit. So the minor league schedule has changed a little. But in 2011, in my first few years, it was 144 games in 152 days, and for very, very little pay. There was a whole Twitter snafu this week about, should you take unpaid internships? Should you not? I got lucky that my parents had I'm very fortunate they paid some of my college tuition, which is not the case with everybody. And I could go stay at home in the off season. If I couldn't do that, I mean, I basically got paid nothing for the Chiefs job. And Jason would split his per diem with me. His per diem on the road was $30 a day for 3 meals. And I got nothing. And he was gracious enough to split that with me. So basically we were getting $15 a day each for meals. But the other aspect of this is 144 and 152. And I did almost all of them, just a couple of road trips I sat out. You spend every waking hour of your life with the same person. I didn't have an apartment when the season ended. So Jason had a 2-bedroom. It just made sense for me to just move in with him for the season. And then on the road, again, to keep costs down, the team would have the broadcasters room together. 7 o'clock game, we'd often show up at the park at 12 because we had to create a stat pack. We have to make game notes for media, set up any interviews, talk to player or coach for our pregame interview, and then prepare for the game. Set up your equipment. So 12 o'clock, you're there. 7 o'clock game, maybe it's 3 hours, pregame show or post-game show. You tidy up with a couple of things, and there were nights where you'd leave at 11. You'd be there 11 hours in the same booth with the same person, and then we'd go back to the apartment or the hotel. So you can be the best of friends, and we are now, and still grow totally sick of each other. So yeah, by the time we got back, I was just tired. I was exhausted. I've been working long days. We're not eating very well. We're eating ballpark crap. And it was like, all right, work's not over. So it did drive me crazy because we were just around each other all the time. And again, I was just a 21-year-old bratty kid. And so he didn't particularly enjoy me for the first few months. So it was a tough relationship for a while until we really broke through in around August. But yeah, I just didn't want to listen to any more tapes. I was just sick of it. I just wanted to go home and just sleep for 16 hours every night. But I didn't, and I'm better because of it.
You want to be a 21-year-old. You want to go out and maybe have some drinks, enjoy yourself, be a young person, be immature, all that other stuff. But, you mentioned this relationship with you and Jason. You'd have it when you're 21. If my timeline's correct, you guys are together from not just 2011, but all the way to 2015. You guys spend multiple seasons with each other until Jason leaves in 2015. And I was fortunate enough in that last season to work with you guys back in the studio. And I say this is a compliment. This is a compliment to you, but you sounded more and more like Jason every season. And I know Jason probably like, he's stealing my stuff. And I'm like, you are improving as a broadcaster, and you're kind of following, you're working with him and all these things. So 2000, let's just kind of fast forward, unless you think I'm missing something that's really important you want to share. I kind of want to fast forward to 2015 where a change happens. You're not going to lose your mentor, your partner, your friend in 2015 as he goes on to a different path in his career. Kind of take us through what is Kevin Brown now in fall of 2015. The Chiefs are having a good year, but Jason's going to leave on to something else, and your career is going to change.
The only, just to be specific, the only thing I'll correct you in is he left at the end of the 2014 season.
Thank you.
So it was, I think it may have been right around August 1st, and Jason left to get an ESPN and Westwood One radio package. So 2015 was my first full year without him. But yeah, 2012 and 2013, we just became closer and closer. Our relationship grew. 2014, in the off season of that year, neither of us were certain if Jason was going to come back because he was really in demand at that point. He had started working some ESPN events. He had started working for radio, and it was only very late in the off season when he had said, "I'm going to come back." In fact, I had a friend of mine who had interned with us a couple of years prior that I was seriously talking to and saying, "Hey, you might be my number 2 this year. I mean, I don't want to hold up your life, but I'm not sure if she's going to come back." He decided late in the offseason, I'm going to come back. I think it's going to be my final year. And I'm going to hand over more responsibility to you. So the first 3 years, it had been Jason 6 innings, me 3 innings of play-by-play. And then that got split down the middle. So one night he would do 5 innings and I would do 4. The next night I would do 5 innings and he would do 4. And I would take the lead on the broadcast. And then the next night he would, and vice versa. So you say what a lot of people said, which is that I just started sounding more and more like him. And again, you do the raw math. We're probably at 480 games or something like that together in those 4 years. So naturally, you just start to sound like your broadcast partner. But I remember his final game. It was a Sunday afternoon game. I believe it was with you, right? Were you in the studio for that game?
I was.
So you and I, we got together all these tape messages of friends, family members, broadcasters, wishing Jason well. And it was a Sunday afternoon game. We played them all out of breaks and during pitching changes and all throughout the show, made him cry a lot. Really, really, really emotional day because here's my, one of my best friends and my mentor, my broadcast partner. And it was just a salute to the broadcaster he is and the person he is. And we got off the air that day. A few of us went to go play mini golf. And then I got back in my apartment like 7, 8 o'clock. And I just crashed It was emotional for me. I'm sure it was emotional for him. It was emotional for me. He flew somewhere the next day. He had a game, or he was going to visit a friend on vacation. I can't remember which. And I showed up at the park the next day, and there was a game to play. And I just slid into his chair, and I had a sense of confidence that I'd never had before. There were a couple of days that year where he wasn't there because he was busy, and I got to be the guy in charge. And being the number two in minor league baseball is probably similar to being the number two in a lot of places, which is you feel like there's only a certain amount of your job you can do, because the person who's the number one, or your boss or whatever, if it's a GM, an assistant GM or something like that, that person's been there longer than you have. That person has made relationships. So you are starting way behind. You want to have relationships with the manager and the coach and the players and the front office, but the person ahead of you already has all of those relationships, and they are longer relationships, and they are stronger ties. So you just feel like the sidekick. So when you get a chance to shine, I guess it's sort of a make or break situation. And I never felt until that year like I was ready to do the job. And the day he left, I felt the most ready to do the job that I had ever felt. Like these nearly 4 years had trained me exactly for this moment. And then I took over and had the lead for the rest of that year and the next 3 years. So it was all the tapes, all the early days, all the game notes, all the conversations we had, one by one, just kind of drilled into my subconscious. And then the day he left, I got to the park and I said, I'm not scared. I can't believe how ready I am to do this, but I feel ready to do this.
And you are fantastic. Like your mini golf game at Fairmount Glen on the west side of Syracuse. That's how good your broadcasts were, by the way, for my
Hopefully
west side
better.
people. Hopefully better. So here you go. You're by yourself. I shouldn't say by yourself, but you're in a new step of your career. Like you said, the confidence is there. You're evolving as a broadcaster. Great things are happening. And now some people listening to this might say, wait a second, this is the Kevin Brown from ESPN. How does it happen? Now, again, I have to be a little careful with some of these questions because these are currently your employer. So if there are certain things you don't want to share.
Out of context, Brown calls employers jerks. I love them. They're wonderful people. That was a joke.
That's right. You can share as much or as little as you want on these next two questions. Help us through the timeline of what happens where you go to the worldwide leader or your first broadcast on the 4-letter network.
So first of all, I got an agent, and that's essentially necessary evil is a strong term, but it is something you need in this profession. Actually, my agent now, tangent, is a buddy of mine from Syracuse. Small world. He was one of my writers at the student radio station, decided to go in another path, and now he's in charge of my career and my money. So it worked out for him. I got an agent. It's actually the same agency as well that Jason's involved with. And he had ended up there through some connections. And If Management's the group, they're in New York City. I was in the New York area. I met with them for about a year. I sent them stuff over and over. Okay, we like this. We don't like this. Send us a new tape. Okay, we like this, but work on this. Send us a new tape. Okay, you worked on this. Send us this. And on it went. And finally, we got to a point where they said, okay, we think you have something. And they brought me on. And that starts to open some doors. Because now you have an agent. Now you have people who are connected with the business, and they can say, okay, I was talking to such and such from ESPN. I brought up your name. Hey, if you go sit down with this person, tell them that this guy sent you. So it's 2015, if my timeline is correct. And let me make sure it is 2015. This past year was 2020. I was doing football, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, okay. So it's 2015. The Syracuse Chiefs are in North Carolina. They're actually in Durham, but I drove to Charlotte for the day. Charlotte is the secondary site of ESPN. Bristol, Connecticut's the main one. Charlotte offices are the secondary offices. Now, the Chiefs did play in Charlotte, but I guess I was just too thick-headed at the time to realize I should go to ESPN. The thing I've realized about ESPN and about corresponding businesses is you can email folks a million times. They are all very busy. If you say, I'm going to be in town, can we sit down for 15 minutes? They're much more likely to be open to you. Which I think is universal advice. Maybe in a post-COVID world. Hey, I'm in town. Can I sit down? Can I buy a coffee? That works a lot better than, hey, here's my email. Here's my stuff. I sat down with a guy named John Vassallo, who was a coordinating producer at ESPN through the end of last year. He goes by JV. And JV and I started talking. He said, okay, so tell me what you do. I said, I've done a lot of baseball, basketball, football. I'd done local TV for a few years at that point. I've done hockey. And he stopped on hockey. He said, oh, we don't have a lot of hockey announcers. Maybe we'll put you on some hockey. Okay, I thought, great. Didn't think anything of it. Next month, we're in Pawtucket playing the Pawtucket Red Sox. I drive up to Bristol, Connecticut for the day. It's about an hour and a half from Pawtucket. Again, a little out of the way, but have to use the time we have. I sit down with a couple of folks in Bristol. One of them is a gentleman named Stas Hall, who was also at ESPN until last year. Stas Hall was in charge of scheduling for what were at the time ESPN3 games, the online games. Now that's just the ESPN app. And I sat down with Stas for 15 minutes. I had sent him my tape, I don't know, a half dozen times. Thanks for sending this. We'll look at it. Nothing. We sat down for 15 minutes. We talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins and his love of bass guitar and maybe a little bit of sports. And Stas says, all right, I'll see if I have anything for you. 3 business days later, out of the blue, Stas says, hey, do you want to do this football game in week 2? It's Northwestern State against Louisiana Lafayette. It is a nothing garbage game. And I could not have been more excited. All I did was show up, right? So I showed up. We sat down for 15 minutes. I guess he thought, okay, this guy doesn't seem like a total creep or a weirdo. Let's give him a shot. So I went and did an ESPN3 football game. It went fairly well, I think. I didn't curse. I didn't say anything offensive. My suit was 3 sizes too big, but that's okay. And I cut up a stretch of that football game, and I emailed it to JV. I said, hey, JV, hope you're doing well. Got my first ESPN3 chance on this football game, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And to this day, I have no idea if you ever watched the tape, but he responded back, how would you like to do 2 hockey games on ESPNU? So that is linear TV in November. Well, sure, I'd love to. What I didn't tell JV and what I haven't told you all until this moment is that I had done like 8 hockey games in my life, maybe not even 10, a couple of high school games, some Colgate hockey, an RPI game once. But he asked what I did, and I said I did hockey. At this point in my life, and my knowledge has grown, I don't know a damn thing about hockey. I swear to you, I've been making it up as I've been going along on the air. But I said, sure, I'll do it. So I go crazy researching Penn State hockey in Wisconsin, and then Michigan, I think, was another game. And I watch Doc Emmerich, and I literally write down all the verbs he uses in a game in a notebook. And those were my first linear broadcasts. And then JV says, hey, we've got the NCAA hockey tournament coming up. We have 4 regionals. They only aired 6 regular season games, and I did 2 of them. So we're going to put you on the tournament for a regional. Okay, great. So I did a weekend of the NCAA hockey tournament, and it went really well. And those games were on TV. The next year, I now have some tape. I've now been on ESPN something. And the high school football position is open. There's a weekly high school football package because the high school football announcer of the last 2 years has moved on to college football. And that high school football announcer was Jason Benetti. So through my connections with JV, who is now overseeing high school football, I end up getting the high school football package. I'm on TV doing football every week, a couple of college football games too. That rolls into college basketball, and basically we were away from there. But it all started with me saying I do hockey, a sport I knew very little about. And so the moral of the story is say yes to stuff and then figure it out along the way.
It's a compliment to your work that they kept asking you to come back and do more and do more. And I believe there's a Frozen 4 at some point. Didn't you work with John Butchergross?
I haven't to this point. I would love to, though. But I've done the tournament every year. Right. It's been held. I've done the NCAA hockey tournament every year since then. And it's literally one of my favorite weekends of the year, every single year.
It's amazing to see all the opportunities that come from that and everything else. I want to get to this Oriole question. Then I got 5 questions to wrap because I love all the stories you've been able to tell. So you did work at the AAA levels we've touched on. Then the Chiefs are the affiliate of the Nationals, and you are able to now secure, and this is your current position we are taping in March of 2021. You are the voice of the Baltimore Orioles. Again, you're an employer, so share as much or as little as you want. How did you land a gig as a Major League Baseball broadcaster?
So I'll try to make it a quick story, but 7 years with the Chiefs, Nationals AAA affiliate. 2017, I get a call in the offseason from Dave Jagler, who is the Nationals #2 radio guy. And Dave says, hey, in May, Charlie Slows, the #1 radio guy, is going to be missing a couple of games. His son is graduating high school. And I barely know Dave at this point, I should say. So this is really out of the blue. In fact, he called me when I was in Washington, D.C. for a game, weirdly enough. I was printing out my charts for a Howard University basketball game, the great HBCU Howard University. And Dave calls and says, Charlie's going to be out. I brought your name up to the Nationals, and I think they're going to go for it. So would you like to do these 2 Major League games in May? Absolutely shocked. Again, I had very little relationship with Dave. And the fact that he went out of his way to say, let's give this guy an opportunity is just a seismic, life-altering moment for me. I said, yes, I would like to do Major League Baseball. Thank you very much. Chiefs were in Buffalo the day before, so I drive my broadcast partner to Buffalo. And then Pittsburgh is a short drive from there. Nationals are in Pittsburgh, play the Pirates. I go to D.C., do a couple of Nationals games. I, like Jason, left near the end of that year. My final day was July 31st, a Sunday, very similar to Jason. And the Saturday night before my final AAA game, I get a message from Dave London, who is in charge of broadcasting for the Nationals. And Dave London says, hey, Johnny Holiday was going to fill in on TV this week for Bob Carpenter. Johnny's not feeling great. Dave Jagler is going to go from radio to TV. Would you like to do radio with Charlie for a week? By the way, the Nationals are going to play the Marlins on the road and then go play the Cubs on the road. Holy bleep. I get to go to Wrigley Field? Yes. So this is literally the night before my final AAA game. And I have to keep it a secret the whole day. Is I have folks in the booth, and Sean McDonough's there because he's being inducted into the Syracuse Baseball Hall of Fame. And Sean is one of my idols, does a couple innings with me. And yeah, I go through the whole game, very emotional day again. And then I get up there and I go, okay, now I have to pack for a week of Major League Baseball travel. So I join the Nats on the road at the Marlins and at the Cubs, and it's the absolute week of my life at that point. Fast forward 2 years, my agent gets a call in the offseason. This is January of 2019. Joe Angel is retiring. Joe, longtime radio voice of the Orioles. The Orioles are looking for a young play-by-play voice to step in and fill some of his work. Masson, Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, airs the games for the Nationals and the Orioles. Because of the work I had done filling in for the Nats, there were some folks there that that knew me and that I guess liked my work, had a relationship with me. So when it came time for the Orioles to find somebody, through the connections with Masson, my name was in the mix. My agent sends the folks at the Orioles my work. They get back to me, say we'd like to meet. I meet with a producer from Masson who happened to be in New York for the day. It goes well. I take a train down to Baltimore a couple of weeks later. I meet with who's my now boss, Greg Bader, at Camden Yards, and we were off and running from there. But again, somebody going out of their way for me. Benetti went out of his way for me in 2011 when I wasn't ready. And the team's general manager knew I wasn't ready, but Jason stuck his neck out and said, I think he's good. I think we should keep him on. And that turned into 7 years. Dave Jagler, who I barely knew at the time, stuck his neck out and said, I think Kevin should do these games with me. That turns into a major league opportunity. And then 2 years later, the team that shares the Beltway and shares a network has an opening. And again, pure dumb luck here. People went out of their way to say, let's give Kevin a shot. And thank God it paid off.
Crazy, man. Now, again, it's a compliment to your work because they're just not randomly hearing somebody and think, this guy's okay, we'll give him a shot. It's a compliment to the efforts you put in with Jason and those days on the road in the minor league baseball system and everything else. I'm happy you're doing that. So that leads to my 5 questions here for the Oriole fans. O's expectations. I know broadcast. I don't think I spelled expectations right. Maybe I did.
No, you did. You got it.
Good.
Yeah, but you
I know
broadcast O's, which is weird.
What are the expectations for the team in 2021 as I quickly remove this graphic?
You were right on. Expectations, expect what I would say is individual growth. Nobody expects this to be a playoff team this year. In fact, Fangraphs put the Orioles at 0.0%, which is kind of morbidly hilarious. But every farm system ranking has the Orioles on the up and up and improving dramatically. We might see Adley Rutschman this year, number 1 overall pick a couple of years ago. That would be awesome. We're going to see a lot of young pitchers this year. This is a full-scale organizational rebuild. So this is year 3, and O's fans may be frustrated that it's not here by year 3, but you're going to see a lot more exciting young players. This is a successful season if more young players come up and grow, the young base that's here grows, and by the end of the season, you think these 10 guys in the big leagues are part of a playoff team nucleus, or could be. That, to me, is a successful season.
On the visual side, you can see under the bottom left there, it says "Not That Kevin Brown." Have you ever considered going with Kevin Noble Brown? Has the agent given you advice to go with the middle name and have it extended?
No, that's in my email address, and my Instagram is Noble Kevin. My middle name is Noble. My mom's maiden name is Noble. I've not considered it. It is a somewhat tiresome but fun bit when people say, Kevin Brown, I thought that was the pitcher. No, it's not. Nor was it the 30 Rock actor who played Grizz. Or was it .com? I never get those right. One of them was Grizz, one was .com. I don't know. He was in Tracy's crew, but I've never considered it. No, it's fun to fool people, I think.
I'm sad you didn't consider it. It's like a very Austin Danger Powers if you use it as, an adjective, right? Noble?
It sounds a little uppity. Kevin Noble Brown. What if nobility?
Send it over to your agent. Say, Gaz
right.
is requesting it. So
I'll pitch it. Pitch it.
It won't go well. What is life like for you over the last 13, 12 months in COVID? I know last time you and I spoke, you were giving play-by-play of the legendary backyard baseball game on the PC.
Yeah, I did. I did lose my mind for a bit there, like we all did. In fact, it might not be back. I've had a lot of downtime, like everybody else. I've thrown myself into some side projects. I've had stretches where I've done a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of piano. I've been playing a lot of online chess recently. Queen's Gambit has really gotten to my head. I have been busy. Baseball season, I did half the games for the Orioles this year. Those were all at Camden Yards. And in the past few months, I've been doing college basketball out of my apartment. So ESPN has all these live from home kits, probably 100, 150 they've shipped out to different play-by-play announcers around the country, trying to keep people at home, cut down on travel, people on site. So I've had most weeks recently, I've had 2 games a week. And I'm using the week to prepare and call coaches and watch tape. And then I'm setting up a monitor and a laptop and a camera and a light in my office upstairs. And I'm calling a nationally televised basketball game from my Queens, New York apartment. So I've become busy.
Good.
It's been fits and spurts. There was time early on and after baseball season where I just had to fill my time with whatever random project I could find. But I have been a normal amount of busy during basketball season, just without the travel.
Makes sense. I was hoping for more and more videos, Joe Buck, like of you just broadcasting your daily life and the chew toy with the donk and everything else.
I did some of that. And early on, I simulated the entire NCAA tournament and did fake sports reports, and I called it the SSN, the Simulated Sports Network.
I did catch that. Benetti made an appearance, didn't he?
Yeah, Benetti made an appearance. Joe Lenardi, I got in an appearance. Joseph Fred from ESPN. Chris Spatola was in one. Chris Budden. We had some great guests. Sean Farnham. But then that was around the time where every broadcaster tried to do something. Like Brandon Gaudin had the unbelievable "How did he do it?" one-shotting moment video. Benetti had the sportscaster scenes. I did a Les Mis thing with him. It's like everybody was doing something to try and stay relevant. So I had my month of fake NCAA tournament reports, and then I got out of the game after that.
You've had so many different moments, both at ESPN and Major League Baseball. Has there ever been a moment where you kind of just took a step back and thought, wow, this is really cool. This is the I made it moment. If it ends right here, at least I got to do this.
I guess some small moments. Yeah. I mean, my first major league game I remember very vividly. May of 2017, Nationals at Pirates. I'm very rarely nervous on the air. I don't know why that is. I get a little anxious before a game, just like an excitable kind of anxious. But I don't typically have performer's nerves. I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've been legitimately nervous going into a game. I'm not sure why that is, but stepping into the press box at PNC Field in Pittsburgh was a jaw-dropping moment. If you've never been to Pittsburgh and to PNC Park, first of all, please go. It's gorgeous, gorgeous park, I would say to folks out there. And secondly, the booth is up very high. Along with Nationals Park, it is probably the highest booth in the big leagues. So you're standing up exponentially higher than in all the small minor league parks. You're looking down at the field. The players look like termites. And the skyline of Pittsburgh is in the background with the Roberto Clemente Bridge and the three bridges across the water to the city. And it's just mesmerizing. There are some beautiful AAA skylines, but there's nothing like PNC Park at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Oh my God, it screams, this is the big leagues. And I just sat there for 20 minutes watching BP because you're up so high, just trying to get a feel for the way the ball goes off the bat. And I was pretty fast on the air that night. But not like horribly out of shape. I finished the game and I thought that was a little fast, but that was a baseball game. I've called hundreds of these. The stakes are higher. It's just a baseball game. I can do this. So if there's one moment, I think it's that moment where I was on the air, I called a game, I got off, and I said, that felt pretty much normal. But the moment walking into the press box when I looked at the skyline was anything but. That was very much abnormal. It was a goosebumps-inducing moment, genuinely. Just the scale and the magnitude of it all. So that's the one I'll single out in my career. That's the moment I'll never forget.
It's very cool. It's Getting There with Gaz. I close with these questions. Best advice for young broadcasters, age, starting your career to get where Kevin Brown is right now in his career?
I mean, you could try to kill me. I would leave an opening. I wouldn't recommend it because I like my life.
The perfect crime.
Yeah.
Take him out.
What have I done? I'm going to be on a Netflix series in a year.
Will it get me clicks and views? If that's the case, Kevin, you sacrificed it for me. I appreciate that.
That's right. Anything for you. Call games always. Say yes to everything. Get a little $10 recorder. Go drive to a high school football game, basketball game, lacrosse game. Make a tape. Call a game off your screen. Do a mock sportscast. If you don't do it, somebody else is going to be doing it. And say yes to everything. Everything. Don't say you can't do this because it's a 4-hour drive. Don't say this. If you're within your means. Again, some people, I was lucky to be able to stay at home. And some people can't afford certain things. And it is a tough business to break into financially for a few years. But if you can say yes to everything, say yes to everything. I did a football game on Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. Local TV up near Syracuse. Was a Hobart football game.
Let's go, my alma mater.
Shout out Statesman.
Did you do a Hobart and a Salve game? Have you done both my alma maters in Syracuse? Salve High School? I don't know. Maybe you just did Hobart.
Probably at some point. Hobart, it was 2012. I had tickets to see Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band at the Meadowlands the night beforehand. It was a noon football game at Hobart. Maybe this isn't the best advice. I did not want to give up the Bruce tickets because how often do you get to see Bruce Springsteen? My first time seeing him. Went to see Bruce at the Meadowlands, took a bus back into Penn Station. The bus made a wrong turn, almost went into a wall. Got back into Penn Station, took the train home. Probably got home at 2 a.m. Woke up at 5 and drove from Long Island to Hobart for a 12 noon football game. Did the game. Did it change my career? Maybe not. But if I didn't do it, somebody else was going to do it. And it was 3 hours I could work on my craft. And I'm pretty sure plays from that tape made it onto an eventual tape for my agent. And if you can, say yes. If you're within your means to, say yes to everything because somebody else is going to do it.
Awesome, man. Great advice to give right there for all the young broadcasters. And did I miss anything? We spent so much time together. I know you're super busy. You're talking about all the games. Do you have one other story you want to close with? Did I miss a really important part of your career? Are you done with me? How is the chew toy now? How is everything? Are we all good?
My dog's just, he's out. We're past his dinner time, but he's out. He gave up on all the chew toys. He had the football, he had the monkey, he had the beer. Did we miss anything? Oh, gosh, probably, but people have heard me talk for enough. So
do you want to give me a Benetti or a McDonough impression? I know back in the day you used to be able to nail some impressions. I feel like I'm sitting you up like a stand-up comedian to give me your best material now.
I can't do McDonough because Benetti's McDonough is too good.
Okay.
My McDonough is just an impression of Benetti doing a McDonough impression. I can do some impressions, but I don't want to offend anybody.
Okay, fine.
So I'll do one off air. How about that?
Okay, that's fine. Kevin, I appreciate the time, man. Best of luck this spring with the Orioles and the ESPN broadcast. I told you before we started taping, I get excited seeing you on the broadcast for all the ESPN stuff you're doing. Glad our careers were able to cross paths. You're not done with me. I'm still going to keep texting you and everything else.
Good.
Wishing you best of luck, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
Please do. Good to see you, buddy.